Construction of pattern for Jhabla. In the previous session, we identified the various measurements required to make the Jhabla. In this session, we will see how to construct the pattern for the Jhabla based on drafting instructions. At the end of the session, you will be able to estimate fabric required for making a Jhabla, construct pattern for a Jhabla. As per the measurement chart, the full length of the Jhabla is 21 inches and the chest circumference is 21 inches. With these measurements, let's calculate the length of the fabric required for the Jhabla. If we add 1 inch seam allowance for the bottom hem to the full length of 21 inches, the total comes to 22 inches. This is the length of the front side of the Jhabla. To get the total length of the fabric, we will multiply 22 inches by 2, which comes to 44 inches. We will round this figure to 47 inches. The fabric for the facing and string can be cut from the leftover piece. Before we go about constructing the pattern for the Jhabla, let's first take a look at how our pattern would actually look like. If we were to fold the Jhabla symmetrically lengthwise into two, this will be our pattern. We will need to make a few calculations with the measurements taken before we start with the construction of the pattern for the Jhabla. We will need to add a seam allowance to the full length for making a hem at the bottom of the Jhabla. Since this is a children's garment, the hem should not be very wide. So we add 1 inch to the full length to have a half-inch wide hem. Thus, adding 1 inch to the full length of 21 inches, we get a total of 22 inches. However, we need not add any seam allowance or wearing ease to the chest circumference, as while drafting, we will use half of the chest measurement on 4 layers of fabric, which gives us twice of the full chest measurement. This will also enable us to provide for the gathers at the neck opening and thus create the characteristic style of the Jhabla. Considering that the full length of the Jhabla is 21 inches plus 1 inch, which is 22 inches, and the chest circumference is 21 inches, we will require these fractions before we construct the pattern. Now, let's see how to construct the pattern for the Jhabla based on drafting instructions. First, draw a baseline which represents the fold when drafting on fabric. We will name this line as baseline fold. Now, mark point 0 at the upper end of the baseline. From point 0, draw a right angle line to the baseline. This line represents the shoulder and will have a fold when drafting on fabric. We will name this line as shoulder fold. From point 0, measure and mark 10.5 inches on this line, which is half of the chest circumference. Mark this point as point 1. Again, from point 0, measure and mark 22 inches along the baseline. Mark this point as point 2. From point 2, draw a right-angled line to the baseline fold. Now measure and mark 10.5 inches on this line. Mark this point as point 6. Connect points 1 and 6 in a straight line. Lines 0, 1 and 2, 6 have the same length and are parallel. Similarly, lines 0, 2 and 1, 6 have the same length and are parallel. Now from point 2, measure and mark 1 inch along the baseline fold. Mark this point as point 3. From point 3, draw a line in a right angle to the baseline fold. Mark the point where the line meets the next vertical line as point 7. This line 3, 7 is parallel to the line 2, 6 and represents the finished length of the jhabla. So we will name this line as length. From point 0, measure and mark 5¼ inches along the baseline fold, which is quarter of the chest circumference. Mark this point as point 4. Now from point 4, draw a line in a right angle to the baseline fold. Mark the point where the line meets the next vertical line as point 5. This line 4, 5 is parallel to line 0, 1. Also, lines 1, 5 and 0, 4 have the same length. This line 5, 1 will be the sleeve opening. Now from point 1, measure and mark 3½ inches, which is 1/6 of chest circumference along the shoulder line fold. Mark this point as point 9. From point 0, measure and mark 1 3/4 inches, which is 1/12 of chest circumference along the baseline fold. Mark this point as point 8. Now starting from point 8, draw a short line about 1½ inches in a right angle to the baseline fold and then shape towards point 9, ending in a right angle. This curve 8, 9 will be the neckline. See how the curve is shaped the most close to point 9. Only if we start and end in a right angle will the neck opening be smooth and without corners. Now from point 5, measure 2 inches to 3 inches. In our case, we will mark 3 inches on the line connecting points 5 and 4. Mark this point as point 10. From point 6, measure 3/4 inches towards point 7 and make a mark. From line 2, 6, shape towards point 6 up to the 3/4 inch mark. Similarly, from point 7, mark 3/4 inches upward. Mark this point as point 11. From line 3, 7, shape up to point 11. Connect points 10 and 11 in a straight line. Join points 5 and 11 with a curve, starting with a right angle and joining the straight line 10, 11 about midway. This curve 5, 11 will be the side seam of the jhabla. Thus, we have marked the bottom, sleeve opening, neckline and the sides of the jhabla. In this session, we have learnt how to construct pattern for a jhabla. Before we conclude, let's take a look at the key steps involved in constructing the pattern for a jhabla. Step 1. Draw lines representing the baseline fold and the shoulder fold. Step 2. Draw line 3, 7 representing the finished length of the jhabla. Step 3. Mark points 4 and 5 to get the sleeve opening 5, 1. Step 4. Mark points 8 and 9 and join them to get the neckline. Step 5. Mark points 10 and 11 and join points 5 and 11 with a curve to get the sides of the jhabla. With that, we've come to the end of this session.